Yeah, once again, my name is Nalangira. I'm from East Africa, Uganda. I'm happy to see you here. And I was told before I came, in this audience, you're only gonna receive, only 3 people are gonna come. But I'm seeing the audience, the whole place is full of people. That means this is a very lovely place, and everyone loves to come here and listen. So today I'm gonna drive you direct to Uganda without having a ticket, without having a visa. So you don't need to pay for the ticket for today. I'm gonna make sure that I drive you direct to my country. And before I play this instrument I'm gonna play here is called the Kalamazoo. And this one is called Adongo. I just built this one month ago. And this one I just got it from Uganda. They just sent to me, say, you play your instrument, I'll play it for you. There's another one small here, but I have a lot of instruments. It's because of the time limit. I decided to bring just some of the instruments. Otherwise, if I bring all my instruments, that means we're gonna spend the whole night, the whole day, the night, the other night. Then it won't be a very good thing. So when they tell me, I just sit down and I select what instrument can I take, what instrument can I leave. So this instrument here is called the Kalamazoo. And this instrument is tuned in the pentatonic scale. So when I was on my tour in China, I was like, I played all string instruments, but I needed something really different with like a double string. Then I saw people playing this instrument, and I was like, oh, let me try to look for the sound, for the price of the instrument. This instrument was costing $1,000 plus dollar. Then I looked at to myself, I was like, me to spend $1,000 to buy an instrument? No way. Then I went back to Uganda, I found a propane tank. After seeing a propane tank, my mind was like, there's an instrument you saw online. Why can't you build that instrument? You built a lot of instruments, why can't you do that? Then I got the propane tank and I cut it into pieces. Then I ran into the forest, I grabbed the stick. Then I was able to afford $50 to buy guitar picks plus the piazzos. Then I built myself an instrument using $50. I saved $950. But if you ask me where the money is, I won't answer you. Yeah. So this is the warning. If you see any Subaru car passing by your place and you have a propane tank and they don't see your propane tank, don't call the police. Just make sure before I finish this show, you come and get my contact. Before you call the police, just first call me and say, Sammy, I saw you passing here. I don't see my propane tank. Do you know where it is? If I say no, then you call the police. But before you call the police, first call me. Instead of a propane tank, you'll get an instrument. Thank you. Why say wano, obugere wenda wambeho. Why say wano, obugere wenda wambeho. Why say wano, obugere wenda wambeho. Wambeho. Why say wano, obugere wenda wambeho. Why say wano, obugere wenda wambeho. Why say, obugere wenda wambeho. Now we would have omugere wendaba wambewo. Waize wano, waize omugere wendaba wambewo.
Just try to pass by, none of the ducks will survive. Yeah, so it's just a kind of like a change where we come from and here. So and I remember one day even one of my students was gonna take a bath, and they put a lot of water into the bathtub. Then she was like, "What am I gonna do with this?" They were, you're going to take a bath. With all this water, how many are we going to share this water? You know? Because for us, we are used to go to walk for like 10 miles away to get a jerrycan of water. You know? So it's still only a little bit like this, even they count the water you are drinking. How many cups did you drink today? 2. Tomorrow you're not drinking. Because there's no water. But here you drink water whenever you want. Even I saw some water there. You know, water is everywhere. So this song was about the hunting. Then the next song is gonna be, I'm gonna sing this songs to all mothers, because I played this song for my mom when I was on tour for a long time, and I never had time to see her. She was crying whenever she calls. Then I came up with a song to thank her and tell her how big she is and how wonderful she is, and I always call her the second God. So, because if we had no mamas, would we be here? Because the mother is the second God. I believe that. Because they're the one like, yes, the fathers, they are true, but mothers first. That's how I take it. So this song goes to the mothers. It's called Mama, I Love You. And this instrument I'm playing, it's called Adongo. What's the name of this instrument? This is called Kaminangoni. So next time when I come to perform, you see, I know that instrument, that's Kaminangoni. And this is Adongo. I came with this one from Uganda. I built this instrument 15 years ago. So I've been with this instrument traveling with. It's the simplest instrument to travel with, and the other one, oh, it's far away from me. That kalimba, that's agogo. We call that agogo. I'll get it. I'll go to it so I can play it for you. Oh, thank you. So I just have so much challenge with the tuning. So when I was playing my instruments, I didn't know that it's gonna be chord like this. So when you go into the chord, they lose the tune. Everything goes off tune. So I didn't know until I put them here. I was like, oh my God, I didn't know that it was chord. So they sense the chordness. So I have to keep them like babies in their cover. You have to put the heater on. You know, this instruments, so much work. Imagine how many strings are there? These are 14 strings. This one has 17 strings. You have to tune 17 strings. This one is okay, I think it's 13 string, and this one not tuned. It's ready to go. The other one is you have to tune. But in Africa, we don't use any tuner, so we just tune by ear. But here, if you want to do things fast, just do by the tuner.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I will make sure you get your check. $5 is what I promise you. I'm just going to talk a little bit about a project that I had the pleasure of working on for the Eastside. And when we talk about history, we're usually talking about, for tonight, I'm just going to use this particular definition, and that is that history is discovering, collecting, organizing, and presentation of information about the past. Simply, that's what we talk about when we talk about history. And I was involved in a project with the Eastside neighborhood and in conjunction with the Kalamazoo Land Bank. And a friend of mine, Sid Ellis, who is now the executive director of the Kalamazoo Land Bank, but he wasn't that when he was with me. I helped him get to that position. It was me who got him there. But no, before Sid became the director there, we worked on a project with the Eastside neighborhood and the Kalamazoo Land Bank, and it was part of the Eastside Gateway. I don't know if you see the little park down at the bottom of Felt Street. Have anybody had a chance to visit that? It's a little park like there. I know you don't want to go there now because it's in the wintertime, but in the summer. But it's got a lot of information about the East Side and the project that we worked on. So if you haven't seen it, you should go down and take a look at it. And then also the East Side Sunset Plaza that's right here on East Main. You should take a look at all of that. But we got involved with the project, and what we wanted to do was capture some of the history of the East Side neighborhood. And we thought one way to do that was through doing some type of oral history project. And when we talk about oral history, we're mainly talking about oral history is interviews that record a person's recollection, experience, thoughts, and feelings about a specific event, place, or period of time. And that's what we did. We was in conjunction with the Public Media Network. We had some young people who worked with us on this project and did some of the interviews, and we wanted to try to capture those thoughts and things about some of the people on the east side. We couldn't get everybody, so we finally came down to, we interviewed about 16 different people, different age groups, and we came up with what we call Eastside Voices. Anybody seen this book before, Eastside Voices? If you haven't, you should get a copy of it. I think you might be able to check with the Eastside Neighborhood Association, and they still have some of those. So you really should check this book out. But Sid Ellis and myself, we co-authored this book. We did some of the interviews, but the majority of the interviews was done by young people in the community. And in talking with people, we found out a lot of things about different things. People was telling us about some of the things that they experienced on living on the east side, some of the things that used to be here. And believe it or not, there used to be a lot of businesses on the east side. I mean, the east side corridor, they talked about all the things that was there, and people began listing things and I got to put this down right here so that I can. I was provided with a whole list of businesses that used to be on the east side. And I know some of the older people might remember some of these, so I'm just gonna read off a few names. The In-Between Inn, anybody ever been to the In-Between Inn? Some of them, yeah, okay, he ain't gonna tell us about that one. Marty's Grocery Store, that was a place. Paul's Barber Shop, National Foods, Miller's Market, Town and Country Market. One of the steel markets that's still here is Harding's. It's still here, but that was back in there. Some of the other places, A&P Grocery Store, American National Bank, B&D Supermarket, Treestrom Drugs. I know a lot of people remember Treestrom Drugs, right? Yeah, you remember that one. Eastside Cleaners. They had all kinds of businesses on the east side that people remembered and was able to tell us about in the different stories. One of the things that kept coming up with a lot, and especially some of the older people, the people that was over 40, one of the things that came up constantly was Ms. Alma Powell from the Powell Library. And they all talked about the stories that she would get around and have the kids sit around and read to them. And this was black and white kids. Now, when I mention black and white, I didn't know this myself, but there was what you call Upper East Side and Lower East Side. Lower East Side was kind of like down around Hotop, Bridge Street, in that area down there in Riverview. And that's where the majority of the African Americans lived on the east side. It was kind of integrated somewhat, but the majority of it was black people, and that's where they lived. Then you had the Upper East Side, which kind of like began somewhere around Fairbanks Avenue and went farther east, and that's where you had most of your white people live, and that was the Upper East Side. And there was very few. I've been living on the east side for about 40-some years, and when I moved on Fairbanks, I didn't know the history of the east side, but I knew there wasn't no other black people on the block, so, but I didn't know this. So I was in the Upper East Side, didn't even know it, you know. But things was changing. I think at that time there was one couple that lived on the block. But that was kind of like the dividing line. But one thing in common with both black and white, and when they talked about the east side, was the fact that it was a good place to live. It was a good place to live. Everybody felt that they wanted to be on the east side. People within their own community or their own neighborhood, they felt safe, they felt loved. It was a good place to be, and you had everything you needed. Now, there were some African American businesses on the east side that some of you all might have heard about. You may not have. Anybody heard of the, let me see, Mr. Fred Carver. Mr. Fred Carver was one of the first African Americans to have a welding business. Now, there was another gentleman, Mr. Miller. We weren't able to get his first name, but I think he was the first one to have a welding business. But Mr. Carver was kind of known more than everybody. And Mr. Carver built 2 homes right there on Felt Street, and they are still occupied by his family. The Carvers, they live there. And Mr. Carver had a welding business, Carver welding business. Also, there was the Pacific Club, the PI Club. And everybody knew about the PI Club. That was started by Mr. Council Halls. And I guess the reason this was so much of a history thing was because it was the first time, and this was during the early 40s and 50s, that African Americans and whites socialized under the same roof together without any separation or anything at the PI Club. You had to be a member, and you had, and the thing about it, you had to take an oath to say that you would do certain different things with integrity, that you socialize. But the PI Club was very popular back in the day. I got a chance to go there at the latter part of it when it was kind of closing, but it was the epitome of elegance. Everything was just top notch. But the PI Club, people call it was the Pacific Club, but most people call it PI Club. There was Mr. John Atkins, had a grocery store. And it was located right here on East Michigan, I'm sorry. And Mr. Atkins had a grocery store that was there. There was also the Real Gage, okay? The Real Gage. And the Real Gage was really nice because it was right next door to what used to be the PI Club, but it was called Michael D's back then. So you can go in, you can party, and at 2 o'clock, you can go right over to the Real Gage and get some ribs. So, friend of mine, and I won't call his name because I'll embarrass him, but we used to always go in there and we'd order a meal. We were shooting kind of bad, so we just ordered one meal. And, so one night we went in there and we ordered one meal, and the lady gave us 2 forks because she knew we were sharing the meal. She knew we had no money, So, but the PI Club was there. Also, there was East Main Cleaners that was owned by a black couple. It was right up there in the East Main Plaza. That business was there. And then Mr. Clyde Earls had a garage and gas station over on the east side. Some of you might remember Mr. Herbert McCall. He had a printing company that was on it. These are some of the black businesses that was on the east side as well. But the thing about it, I found with all of these, everybody talked about all the businesses was there. And everybody always came back to Hardy hamburgers. Everybody, black, white, green, yellow, they always talked about Hardy hamburgers, the Dairy Queen, all those different things that was there, I had, when I moved on Fairbanks, one of my neighbors, Jack Casey, John Casey and his family, they lived next door to us, and he was able to provide us with a lot of different things. But all in all, it was a rich history of the East Side in terms of people and what they did. A lot of the different schools, a lot of people went to the school, Roosevelt Elementary School. I think a lot of you probably remember that. Northeastern School, they was there. Spring Valley, Wilson School, that was going back, way back. A lot of people might remember that. And Barber Hall, the military school, I think it was. A lot of people would remember that. So, and then you have a lot of people that came off the East Side roots, African Americans, that went on to be community leaders, such as this Evo Azir, who was a former county commissioner for a long time. Michael Seals, who was a former commissioner for a long time. You also had Eric Cunningham, of recent time, who was a city commissioner for a long time. Patricia Griffin, who was a city commissioner for a long time. They all had ties to the East Side. And then you had other people, like everybody knows this man, our former mayor, Mr. Bobby Hopewell. East Side, There's so many things that people brought out about the East Side, how there was different places to play. Mr. James Palmore, the artist that you will be seeing later on, sharing things, Eastside. He talked about the roundhouse, the wheelhouse, where over there by the railroad tracks now. I think that's torn down now. But he talked about that. It is just so many things. And people really, back then, it was a neighborhood thing. A lot of times people didn't go too far out of their neighborhood because everything was right there. And they had everything they needed. And they was content at being inside their neighborhood. Eventually, people began to spread out and visit other people, and then, you know, you had the busing and all that began to bring other people in. But the East Side was a thriving community. The corridor down the East Side, people talk about all the different things that you had bakeries, all types of things. The bake shop down on Riverview Drive, I know a lot of people probably remember that, you know. You had different things. There was a flower shop down, Parchment Flowers, that was down on Riverview that people might not have to remember. And there used to be Burger Shelf. Burger Shelf was on the East Side. Kentucky Fried Chicken, all of that we had on the East Side. Now, you look around and you don't see a lot of that stuff there anymore. But if you look around, you do see that the East Side is starting to come back alive. They're building different things. I think if you look, you'll see some of the different projects going on. There's some condominiums being built. Some of the buildings now are being torn down. The new structures are being put up. Some of the older ones are being renovated and making it look good. So the Kalamazoo Land Bank and the Eastside Neighborhood Association is definitely working toward to do all of that. So if you haven't, I could stand up here all night and talk about the different people and all the interviews. But if you haven't, call the Eastside Neighborhood Association and try to get this book, because there's a lot of people. We interviewed about 16 people, and there's a lot of information in there. But I think the takeaway here is the Eastside was a vibrant neighborhood. The Eastside was a good place to live. The East Side was where everybody from the East Side who don't even live on the East Side no more, they still feel like they East Siders. And they had pride in what the neighborhood was. They had pride in living on the East Side. And we're trying to bring back that pride. And I think one of the things that we can do to bring back that pride is all work together. See what I'm saying? You know, a neighborhood is only as good as the people that's in the neighborhood. It's only as good as the people in the neighborhood. You can talk about this, that, and the other, but if you ain't doing nothing about it, then they need your help. So I would suggest go to some of the meetings at the East Side Neighborhood Association. Get in touch with different things, know about what's happening on the East Side, put your input in, and bring the East Side back. So I know I wasn't as interested as he was. But hopefully I told you some things that you might not have known about the East Side and some different things. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Happy birthday to the Eastside Eastwood Branch Library. Happy birthday to the library in general. We turned 150 this year. And so for the past, year or so, I have been digging through the library's archives. And I've been learning a lot about the history of the library, and Judy asked me to kind of talk a little bit about Eastwood Branch, and so that offered me another opportunity to dig through the archives and see what I could find through newspaper articles and various other sources, just to kind of share a few tidbits about the library. One of the things I've been thinking about for the past 6 months when I've been researching the library are certain threads and continuities that seem to have kind of run throughout the history of the library and themes. And two of those themes are innovation and access. From the beginning, the library system has really always tried to be open to all people and increase that access as as they went on and progressed and became a better institution from when they started. And innovation, even at the branches level, great ideas have always spawned great new initiatives, and hopefully I'll talk about a few of those. So, this is a map that hopefully some of you can see here, but it is kind of the East Side in 1873. And as you can see here, with the exception of the Michigan Female Seminary School up here, which is up there, there was very little here. This is open land, and there are a few buildings here and there. Prairie, that is Gull Road. Here we have the Michigan Railroad. Comstock Road turns into East Michigan later. And then East Avenue up here, up towards the hill. One of the most interesting names when I looked at this atlas from 1873 is H. Gilbert, who had 25 acres, pretty much smack dab in the middle of the neighborhood. And that is Henry Gilbert, and Henry Gilbert was the first publisher of the Kalamazoo Gazette. Really, when you think of a neighborhood, there are little pockets within those neighborhoods, and they refer to those, it's probably a real estate term, I suspect, as additions. And as you can see here, the East Side was comprised of these platted sections that turned into roads, and later houses were built on the lots. And as you can see here, the earliest was 1884, and that was the Phelps edition. And these were just some of the earlier editions here of people were Bigelow and Phelps. They were actually in business together in the windmill industry, which was a very popular industry in the late 1800s in Kalamazoo. But they were businessmen, and they platted certain sections. Of course, you're going to notice that these names here were converted into street names later on. So, really, Kalamazoo, this mirrors other parts, the south side of Kalamazoo and the west side up more towards like West Main Hill. Early 1900s, late 1800s, this is kind of the boom year for Kalamazoo. It's growing. The paper industry is just about to take flight. Celery industry is really big here at that time period. But yeah, early 1900s, you start to see a little bit more development in the East Side. So this is the East Avenue School. It was established in 1910, the library within it was established in 1910. It was the second branch library. The first was on Portage Street over by the school, what turned into Washington Junior School. But just a few months after that one opened in 1910, the East Avenue School housed the library. Now, the library was part of the school system until 1990, and so many of the access points for all people, including children, were school libraries. In 1918, the director of the library, Flora B. Roberts, she was very interested in expanding library service. Once again, this thread of access and getting library services out to people as much as we possibly could. And she was a big proponent of school libraries. And so you see this big sort of movement. Hillcrest was one up in the Hillcrest neighborhood, West Main School. So you start to see libraries popping up in all of these different schools. And so the access points to a lot of children during the early part of the 20th century was probably their school library. Traveling downtown to the big library was probably difficult for some people. So this building was built in 1883. This picture here was from the 1940s or so. This is that area now. So for those of you who are new to the area, this is kind of the section of where it was located at Gilbert and East Main Street. This is an interior photo of the school. And like I said, we were part of the school system until 1990. And so kids were exposed to books. There's no doubt about that. And as I said there, a lot of the branches were in schools. So the heart of the neighborhood, as Buddy mentioned, one of the many. These are just some of the landmarks. We have the Michigan Female Seminary School, which sits a little bit above the hill, up behind where Walgreens is today. Dorn's Department Store, the Pacific Club, as mentioned earlier, Hardy Hamburgers, Rockwell Park, St. Michael's and St. Mary's Church, and of course the Eastside Neighborhood Association. This is a photo here of Roosevelt School, which was built in 1909 and renamed Roosevelt School in the 20s, when most of the schools that were being built or renovated at that time period were converted into names of presidents. This is the second location of the branch library. It moves up the street to 1719 East Main, next to the Tristram City Drugstore, around 1940. And I haven't found any articles to suggest why they moved, although I speculate that the age of the original East Avenue School building, by that point, having been built in the 1880s, it was probably a fire hazard. It was aged, and there was probably issues with storage. And you can see in the window here a little bit an old car, which probably dates the photo here to the early 40s. These are the two staff members that opened the branch in 1940, Miss Ethel Young to the left and Sophia Polovina to the right. I haven't found out too much information about them or how long they worked there, but they were the staff members. And of course, we all know who this is. And I believe that she was mentioned as a celebrity in Buddy's book. This is Alma Herod Powell, and she was, as Buddy mentioned, the name that pops up in most Eastwood branch history. She was a beloved storyteller, and she passed away in '67, and then it was a couple of years later when they named the Northside branch the Alma Powell branch. So we recently, a couple of years ago, acquired some materials of hers from a family member. So we do have the Alma H. Powell collection at the library, if you ever want to stop in and kind of look at it. I would love to have been able to pick her brain, because what she left behind is clearly somebody who was incredibly interested in knowledge and books. She was constantly writing notes about books to read or books to buy on note cards, church pamphlets, wherever she was writing things down. There's also a series of, I don't know how to describe them, they're romance stories, but with a science fiction character, and her name is not attached to them, which leads me to speculate that maybe she was kind of ghostwriting them. They're really interesting. They're part of the collection. I don't know if anybody knows anything about them. But they were stories written in the 1930s, and they're bound. They're really fascinating. So I wish she was around, and I would love to ask her. So. Lorna Chapman, she was the head of the Eastwood, or the East branch, in the 60s and early 70s, and she is no longer with us either, and I suspect that she kind of mirrored her time in that she seems to have been a bit of a firebrand, who was probably echoing the late 60s and early 70s, the times, because she just seemed like she was really passionate about her job, and she's obviously well known for one thing in particular, and that is the Buchwagen. She had a Volkswagen station wagon, and she and some other staff members would drive around in the summer months, rocking out, rolling down the windows and playing some loud rock and roll music, and the kids would come out and hear her, and she would give them books to read. These were not officially checked out books. She was, here's the book, return it when you're finished. And she used this opportunity to obviously, it was obviously a kind of mini bookmobile, but it was outreach, and it's the kind of outreach and innovation that libraries have really always done. It takes different forms, whether it's a bookmobile or whether it's our current mobile library staff members who get around to various programs and events. But this is just speaks to her level of commitment to get those kids books into their hands. And since they weren't checked out, somebody said, well, what if they don't bring them back? And she said, they'll bring them back. And they did bring them back for the most part. She said in an interview later on, so they mostly came back. And there was a movie program, I believe, during that summer months, and she used this opportunity to kind of tell the kids about the movie programs. So just one of many ways to get the books into hands of children. So this is my favorite East Branch story, which is in 1970, an angry person went to a school board meeting and complained of the windows, the flowery windows that were painted on there by a staff member and some children, in an attempt to beautify a relatively drab facade. This was deemed too psychedelic. Yes, too psychedelic for the, and this is 1970, and apparently Dr. Crum, who was the director of the library at the time, he appeased the critic and he asked them to remove the flowers. So who knows why, what the background story is on that, but that was always one of my favorite stories here. So this is the area today where the second location of the library is located there, along Eastwood, the main drag. So, Eastwood, how does it get the name Eastwood? Well, Eastwood is just, and I apologize for this screenshot. I could not find a map of higher resolution than just a Google map of Eastwood. I'm sure there's out there, one that exists out there, but I could not find it, and I didn't have access to it. And I want to at least show you the geographic borders. It's a larger geographic area than the Eastside neighborhood, and it goes more north and more eastward, but goes over Gull Road there. And Eastwood's history, and this is the dry history that I was talking about, but it's also very interesting. John and Anna Den Bleicher. Now, the Den Bleicher family is a pretty big name in Kalamazoo history for a lot of different reasons. I could probably do a presentation just on them alone. But they came over in 1850 from Holland, and they settled over on the east side of town and had some property in the form of a farm. There were a couple of other families that had very large properties where they farmed as well. The Bishop family, Washburn, Vossler Farms. And over time, the farms were very successful, but as they got older, they started to plat their property and sell that area for lots. So for housing started to develop around the early part of the 20th century. Borges Hospital is built in 1917. The Eastwood Community Club, which was a very active social club here in the Eastwood area. And one of the things that I read about their activities was that in the late 60s, the city of Kalamazoo annexed a portion of land west of Nazareth Road and north of East Michigan Avenue for the purpose of a sewage or a sludge dump. And this was a big deal. It started in 66, 67, around there. And the Eastwood Community Club was very vocal in their opposition to the city's plan to do this because of the smell and the effects that it had on the neighborhood. And I believe it wasn't until maybe 69 or 70 when the city finally got rid of those. So some of the schools, as Buddy mentioned, the Woodrow Wilson Elementary School and the Brucker schools were in the Eastwood neighborhood. Names of streets. Oh, this is an older version here of John Denblaker, looking very stern. But allegedly, the writer, famous writer James Fenimore Cooper, was friendly with the Denblaker family. Thus, we have Fenimore Avenue and Cooper Street. Texel Drive, I always thought that was a cool sounding street, didn't know anything about it. Find out it is the island just off the coast of the Netherlands where the Denblaker family immigrated from. So, thus the name Texter. Gertrude is a daughter of the Denblakers. In fact, there's quite a few names of streets that are associated. Walter, Anne, John Street are all linked to the Denblaker family. Henry Dwillard of the Dwillard Street, he was a local realtor. And last but not least, Gale Avenue was the nickname of Gaylord Vossler of the Vossler family, who were farmers in and around the south of East Maine, very close by. Here is a photo of the Woodrow Wilson School in 1929 as it's being constructed. It is now an open field and a park, and I think this is looking northeast, if I'm not mistaken, so I'm assuming that this is Lum Avenue. It's just a really cool picture of an old building that is no longer around. What I do like about it is that there were a lot of schools in KPS that were built in this time period, in the 1920s and stuff. And they are all kind of pretty standard looking, kind of a boring version of Art Deco, but these have these wonderful Gothic archways, which to me, I just don't know why they put them in there, because it's kind of a throwback architectural detail that I think is very cool. So this is the same school, just a few years later. I think it's looking southeast from the street. So the third location, why is it called Eastwood? Well, it moves a little bit more east to Gale Avenue. Now, what was on Gale Avenue? But it was the John Strand Hall building, which they sold the building to the library in 1974. It was the home of the Eastwood Community Club at the time. And the library was, once again, one of the great themes of the library is storage and space, and how every time they build a building, they then run out of space because of the popularity of library services, and they have to build 20, 30, 40, 50 years later a new facility. So here's another case where they had outgrown their home there on East Main, and they moved into this property. Now, Strand Hall was demolished. And then they built a second building there, which was there during the early 80s, and then this current building replaced it. So a coworker of mine, I think we have, let me see here. Yes, this is the second version. After they demolished Strand Hall, they built this, and I said to my coworker David, who's been in the system for 50 years or so, I said, it kind of looks like a pole barn, and he said, yeah, it kind of did look like a pole barn. So clearly, we've done a better job here architecturally. So this is from the early 80s. Saul Endursky, who was a former director here at the library, comes in the early 90s, and the library gets some funding for several new buildings, And Eastwood is one of those buildings. And here we have a photo of some kids at the groundbreaking ceremonies, ready for their new library building. This is just a flyer for the grand opening, Monday, August 12th, 1996. And as you can see here, the decades of the 90s, you see a lot of new libraries. The Ashtimo Library was built, and all the other ones got little facelifts and renovations as well, including the downtown library. And this is a shot of it. It was designed by David Milling and Associates. The new building is 6,000 square feet, and it cost $1.35 million to build it. So I love the facilities here. I'm sure Judy and staff do as well. One of the things that I think about when I think of the branches is just the intimate connections they have with neighborhoods. I love working downtown. But the kind of cohesion and connection that branch libraries have with particular neighborhoods is really special. And I think that when I was reading Buddy's book, you really sensed that when many of the people being interviewed were kids, that they visited the library often. It was a place, a sanctuary where they could go and get books or other kinds of materials. And hopefully, a couple generations later, their kids are still coming. So we have the Michael Hayden box kite sculpture, prismatic lantern, here in the building. There's a couple of Michael Hayden art pieces in the library system-wide. And I just wanted to plug your book again, Buddy, because it is so good. It's at the library, but you can also buy it, I'm sure. And yeah, I read it, and it really kind of inspired me to dig even deeper into the Eastside history, and Sid as well, co-author. So, great book, so definitely check it out. And that is it. That's my presentation.
So I thought that the talk I would give would be what Eastwood Library means to me. And what Eastwood Library means to me is that it was a magical place, as all libraries are. And it was a place where I learned how to research and how to read and how to do, the things that we do in a library to make our lives better. My parents lived on Arthur Street, which some of you will know is a couple blocks from here. And we, during the summer when I wasn't able to go to school, which I loved to do, instead of going to school, I would be dropped off at the library by my mom, and then my dad would pick me up on his way home from work. And I would stay there for hours, and everyone was welcome at the Eastwood Library, including obnoxious little kids that wanted to read all the grown-up books. And everyone was made to feel like the library was just for them. And the Kalamazoo Public Library instilled in me, and the Eastwood branch instilled in me, a love of libraries that I still have, even though to my wife's chagrin, I don't borrow books from the library. I buy books and then have a big stack sitting around. But that's just me. But Emily Dickinson, the great poet, wrote this: "There is no frigate like a book to take us lands away." Nowadays we might update that. There is no spaceship like a book to take us worlds away, right? Right. But the worlds that the library can introduce to a young mind are fantastic. They're terrific. They're more than we can ever hope for. They're a treasure. And I want to just say what Eastwood Library means to me, or meant to me, is that I spent 27 years on the Board of Trustees, and I was president when the library was rebuilt. If you think I'm bragging, think I'm bragging, talk to Lisa Godfrey. She's got a lot of years on me as a trustee. She was also head of the building committee and knows all the details of that. But I think this is the best building in the system. I kind of am biased, but I congratulate Judy for being able to be the head of this branch and to bring library service to a new generation. And I just want to say what the Kalamazoo Public Library means to me is it's a magic place that built me into the person that I am. For better or worse, just ask my wife about it. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank everyone who's on the library staff for being wonderful. And I want to thank my fellow trustees and ex-trustees for all the work that has been done. And with that, you don't want to hear from this bag of wind anymore, so I'm going to sit down.
So, my name is Chris Fulbright. My husband is Charlie Fulbright, the youngest grandchild of Gwendolyn Tulk. He can't be here right now. He's overseas with his job, so he asked me to come and read something. I'm going to try to keep it together. It's been a difficult season losing Gwen. She's very, she touched a lot of people. I didn't meet her until she was almost 95 when I met her, and she was still in the community doing Meals on Wheels. But so Charlie has this to say. He says, "My name is Charles Fulbright, and I am deeply saddened that I cannot be here with you all to celebrate the life and legacy of his grandmother. She was such an inspiration, not just to him, but to many students in the KPS system she came across. I know you all know her and love her for reading and books. What you may not know is that she was also always willing to help other people in need, volunteering all of the time, even in her 90s, always giving not just to her family, but to the community. She loved Kalamazoo so much, and especially the libraries. She loved to read. Charlie has so many fond memories of her, and it warms his heart. That this portrait hangs here. She was an Eastsider. She lived here for over 50 years. And the people that were part of her life came together to do this. She was definitely one of a kind. And at 105 years old, she lived a fabulous life. She had helped me. She had helped Charlie through his life in more ways than one. She attended the first ever LGBTQ plus Pride Parade in Battle Creek. At 100 years old, she did that. She came down to speak. Love comes in many forms, and she exuberated all of that to the fullest. She will be missed by many, but we know that the impact that she has made to all of us is her legacy. And it is part of who we all are today. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts that thank you.